Have you ever wondered why your favorite taco is costing you an arm and a leg these days? Or is your dream couch still in backorder status for months now? Join us as we go behind the scenes of the global supply chain. Let us discuss and understand its complexity and learn from the industry leaders, professionals, and subject matter experts. Expect in-depth analysis and genuine conversations about the major issues affecting the supply chain today. Welcome to Supply Chain Demystified. Your host is none other than the distinguished supply chain expert, Dr. Nick Valles. Professor Valles is the Academic Director of USC Marshall Global Supply Chain Management and Founding Executive Director of USC Marshall Randall R. Kendrick Global Supply Chain Institute.
We often talk about agility, resiliency, and sustainability in supply chain. But when we think of agility and resiliency, we often mention geopolitics, natural disaster, pandemics. However, the substance that's missing in this conversation in mainstream and in day-to-day practice is the role of cybersecurity. Imagine the world of supply chains. Imagine our world, our personal lives. 30 years ago, there was very little transactions that was digital. Today, it's ingrained. Every information from personal data sets to our livelihoods, to the financial data, our medical data, and everything we consume to everything we recycle, entire value chain is on the digital platform, and how easy that could be at risk. And today I am so pleased that we're going to dive right into talking about the cybersecurity. And I am so thrilled today to introduce an expert, Ernie, who is going to be joining us, the CEO of Planet Security, to give us exactly the nuances about cybersecurity. And I'm going to go into the tier approach in terms of not only looking at this from the supply chain standpoint, but personally, professionally, and how country can actually benefit from some of his wisdom. Please welcome Ernie Edmonds. Ernie, welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. So let's get right into it. I defined sort of a stage for you in the supply chain. We have become digitized, and we continue to be on the path of being very digitized.
Sure.
Right? The concept and conversation about being on the cloud and agentic AIs, we spoke about it, all this transformation, but all of these things are bytes and the bits. They're all staying somewhere. Where does the cybersecurity stands, and then give us sort of a basic definition.
Sure. So cyber, when we look at it, there's, logical cyber, and that's what people often are really used to. But there's the physical aspect, the operational side of things, even down to who you're talking to on the phone, verifying that the person you're talking to is who you think that they are, because you may be talking about something that can glean additional information that maybe you don't want them to have. So cyber is a concept. We have confidentiality, so keep it a secret is secret. And then integrity, keeping a pristine data set. That comes into play with supply chain. Somebody messes up your data set, you send something to the wrong location, or there's waste, there's additional fuel, costs money, things like that. And then availability with things like ransomware. I know that you've talked about that with some of the others. Ransomware, anything that can deny the availability of these systems that have become not only crucial, but so optimized that anything will just throw everything out of sorts. So when we talk about cyber, those are the three canons. So confidentiality, we talk about things like intellectual property. We talk about even procedures and things like that are intellectual property, but it could be goods, it could be just anything that you need to keep that secret in-house. Or maybe it's with the government. You've got, say, classified or CUI-controlled unclassified information, different data types for different types of or different levels of people's access. So that's usually what people think about with cyber. But there is that integrity aspect. One of the companies I worked for, we were expanding really rapid. And we needed to know how much money we had to expand with. Well, say one of our competitors got in and modified our data set to where we overextended ourselves, or maybe they skewed it the other way, and now we didn't expand as fast as what we would like to. And that was a competitive disadvantage or advantage for the competitor because they were able to skew our data set. So the integrity aspect. And then, lastly, without access to these systems or without access to, whatever it is that, the workflow that's necessary to make business work, got a problem. So as security, that's what we deal with, those three aspects. It's called the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So whatever the it is, it usually has components of each of those. And what we look for is exploitation vectors. How would you exploit to make something happen? And then what's the likelihood? We skew that. Is it likely or not likely? And then is it going to put us out of business, or is it just going to be a nuisance, or are we not even going to notice? Sometimes you don't even notice. But you qualify it, quantify it, and then that's how you, in rough terms, that's how you do a risk assessment.
Interesting. And I'm going to set up the two examples, but let me try the first one that I often deal with it. And this appears to be, even though we have a do not call registry that you register your phone number, and that's supposed to block you from all the spam call.
Sure.
And often the spam call, but there's nobody on the other side, but they are hoping that you would say hello and that they record your voice.
Right.
That's one thing that I often, I'm just annoyed by it, but I don't know how to stop it. But the second example that just I got previewed to this week is one of my delegates from overseas traveling and staying with me got scammed out of about 75,000 euro.
Oh, wow.
In a very sophisticated way of a cybercrime that I was just blown away. Didn't really realize until I heard the story about how sophisticated these networks are in terms of the fraudulent transactions that can occur.
Right.
So Ernie, just for the audience, give me a sense of how big is this issue? Because we are living I transact from my phone.
Right.
I use my phone as my passbook. My passport,
Sure.
digital transaction has now overoccupied my life.
Right.
I'm not walking around with pieces of paper anymore,
Right.
right?
It's pervasive. You're right. It's everywhere. The threat actors are getting better by the day. With the advent of AI, now you have a machine speed threat actor that, there's simply no way for us as humans to compete with that. So we have to really do our due diligence and care to make sure that we are protecting what is important to us. The thing with AI is it never forgets. And when we talk about, well, I know I should power all, but when we talk about like privacy and security protections, things like that, AI is constantly crawling the internet. It knows all of our social media. It knows our phone numbers. It knows even down to like your MAC address on your computer. A MAC address is like the hardware ID. In a lot of cases, it knows more than that, a lot more than that. So it fingerprints you, and then when something new comes its way, it's already, the index that I mentioned earlier, it already knows who the likely candidates are that are going to be exploitable. And those are the ones that get targeted first. And it does this in the blink of an eye. So by the time you've heard of it, AI has known about it for a long time. So it's, it is something to be concerned about. The way that we handle this, make sure that the information that you let out is okay to be let out. For instance, a lot of companies will have a default sensitive level. So even when you're talking about like going on vacation, well, if some foreign agency has we'll call it a spy in your neighborhood, they put somebody in a house, like a family, their job is to watch you. So they're talking to your kids. The kid says, oh, we're going to, out of town for a week. We're going to Hawaii. So now that person knows he's out of town for a week. There we go. So they can get in. If you've not protected it inside, then that's potentially an export vector.
But that's a very interesting point, because even your out of office message.
You should use those if it's outside.
So you recommend not to use those because you basically, I say, hey, I'm gone from here to here. So that actually is a clear indication that I'm out.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something you should try to pivot away from. Within the organization, I usually will use them. And what I say is, I'm currently away from my desk. Please contact my boss or something like that, or my, whoever might be able to help them. But I don't give durations, because that, if it's, say it's an insider threat, then maybe they can use that against me, the organization, our team, whatever. But if it's outside the organization, it is common practice. So yeah, everybody does it. It's not a wise thing to do, because you are getting away the information that could be used against you.
So, Ernie, you are the CEO of Planet Security. What a perfect name. You're securing the planet. Okay. Tell me what Planet Security is all about.
We're a 32-and-a-half-year-old cybersecurity company. So when we started, there wasn't a lot of targeted hacking. There were like script kiddies and maybe the opportunistic hacker that, they just got a cable modem and it's constantly connected. This is something I did when I first got connected. You'd scan the internet in your neighborhood, and then there's all the pictures of vacation stuff. So that's my background. I'm a lifelong offensive security person. So I started as a script kiddie hacker and then made a career out of it. Along the way,
So if you will, sorry, just go and define the script kiddie hacker.
so it's just, you find stuff back then a book. I lived near a university. I had access to the library, so I kind of, learned what I could. Now it's far easier to get that information, and most of like these scripts are already pre-made. You just download it and figure out how to use it, and off to the races. So it's a very low level hacker. It's usually somebody that's curious, or somebody that's trying to make a name for themselves potentially. Sometimes, you've got some person that wants notoriety. Other times they get recruited by a spouse. I need to get into my spouse's laptop. I think they're having an affair, whatever. So, there's different motivators. One of the companies I worked for, we were I'm going to say a pet supply company. And there are people that believe that one should not own an animal. So the hacktivists, we were always under attack with that. So anyway, you ask what we've done along the way. We've been in intelligence with the federal government, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, just a lot of the federal agencies. Outside, we've led some of the largest actually the two largest zero trust deployments in the world. We have led those. We've been in the entertainment industry. One of the studios that has not been publicly announced as hacked, we worked there. So we have a lot of experience. We are a company of engineers. There are no non-engineers within Planet Security. So when you talk to someone, they're going to have the basic skill set that I have. Some do have an offensive security aspect, others don't, but they're all battle-hardened engineers that have been overseas and all over the country doing what they do.
So another way of saying that you become from a bad actor to become the CEO of the company to defend them.
Exactly. So when you have that offensive skill set, what is really great is you don't have to read and try to digest what someone else says. You can go into the lab, you can set it up, structure it, and then see the results for yourself and maybe glean something that wasn't in the print. So you get a better understanding, and then if you understand what the threat is and the exposure vector and whatever that looks like, then now you can craft, we operate on what's called most critical path at least cost. So we try to tailor exactly what the need is and then figure out how to keep our client the most competitive in the industry that they can be.
Well, and that's fantastic. And I think when you say having an offensive mind, basically what you're saying, you know how you would successfully hack into something.
Exactly.
And then you're trying to design a mousetrap that prevents somebody else to do what you are.
Right. And so sometimes you have like several ways to get in. And maybe not all of those were identified in the announcement or in, whatever the pages you've been reading. So you can figure that out, and now you're even stronger, and you can offer that to the client so that they really do have a really strong security posture as it relates to that.
So let's zoom right into our supply chain world, right? Mm-hmm. You're talking about global movements of goods, people,
right,
money, information. How vulnerable are we?
It depends on the organization. Let's go back to the the confidentiality, availability, or integrity and availability. Most people target confidentiality because that's common sense. But what they don't often say, and availability, they often will target that because they know that they need something to work in order for their stuff to work. What are the movement? You want things to move in the way you predict that they would move. So integrity is something that often we find is lacking. They don't have robust controls around the data set, whether that would be database, file, whatever. That information has to be in what we call a pristine state in order to be of top value. Otherwise, it's diminished value. Another thing that comes in is the types of controls. So there's ManSec, management security, and that's like the policy. So organizational policy. Thou shalt have an 8-character alphanumeric password with complexity, and you'll change it every 90 days, whatever. So it's policy. And then we have things like Active Directory with Windows, or if you're on Linux, it's OpenLDAP or whatever you have. Maybe it's in the cloud. Then that's the technical controls, or TechSec, technical security, technical control. So those are often really well defined. Sometimes not. Sometimes we go in and it's not that great. But the operational security, that middle step, that is usually lacking. So what we find is things like, how do I change my password in Windows, or how do I do it on a Mac or my phone or whatever? So to have the procedure for how to do that work is important as well. So what happens in, say, a year, your outside consulting firm is gone. The policy still says 8-character alphanumeric. So if you've had turnover, some sort of attrition of that nature, they still know what to do. And then the technical control probably hasn't changed either. So it's important to have that all three of those tiers in order to make an effective security control.
So there is a lot that organization has to put in place, and not just to put in place, but upkeep
For resiliency.
for the resiliency.
Yeah, because you have people that backslide and they got it right, and then now it's not. Something happened, life happens. So in order to maintain that pristine state, then if you have those three tiers, so imagine policy is like high level, 30,000 foot or so. The procedures, depending on how they're written, they're somewhere 5 to 15,000 feet, and then the technical controls are at ground zero. Another thing that comes in is the top two are practice-based controls. So say it's a policy, well, somebody decides not to do it, or they forget to do it, something happens. Now you've got to catch them and then figure out if you're going to hold them accountable and to what degree. And same thing with procedures. They can either do them or not. Those technical controls are founded in science and technology. They will change the password to 8 characters alphanumeric, or they're not going to change it. And then they can't log in because it expired eventually. So if you can drive those controls down, then you have a much better chance of adhering with the control, or with the whatever the thing is you're trying to do. But that's not always the case. Say it's something like you don't want somebody to post classified information on social media. Well, you can go through this step, and a lot of agencies have the money to do this. You'll block social media, this, that, the other, 1, 2, 3, all the way down. And then as a new one pops up, you add it to the blacklist, and it's blacklisted. Well, if you're a small business, you may not have the resources to be that mature. So what works here is a policy. Don't put it up there under penalty of termination prosecution from the authorities. So they know they're going to get in trouble, and it's up to them, but you've saved, a considerable amount on like a filtering proxy or whatever that may be. Mm-hmm. So it depends on what the it is, what you're, able to do, depending on what resources you have available.
So let's stack this up. I want to this is such a fascinating subject. So I'm going to actually set this tier-based wisdom for you, but I'm a Mac guy.
Okay.
Right? Everything I use is on the Apple products.
Right.
Use every latest technology, the fingerprinting tool, getting to my own laptop as a password, the facial IDs, store the passwords, and to simplify it, because obviously there is 500 passwords and they're hard to do these things.
Right.
So imagine somebody listening to this podcast, probably in the same scenario, or probably even more complex than mine. I think I'm simplistic guy, but I think it's 5 devices,
Okay.
right? I mean, so build me up as a person to the institution that I work for, right? And then to the country we're in. Each of this level, how is the cybersecurity potentially dangerous, and what wisdom would you have to ensure that each of these 3 tiers, we have some self-reflection and to-do list that we can check off?
Sure. One of the things we have is protecting whatever the it is protecting America or protecting the American warfighter if it's in a Department of Defense scenario. So for you personally, have that defense or that sensitive default level for your data type, for your stuff. So your passwords, your 2FA, if you're not using 2FA, that's the single best thing you can do for personal.
So that's basically the 2FA, basically it's a dual authentication.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so it can be, we're used to passwords and PINs. That's one type of their factor, so it's a factor. There's biometrics like, eyesight or your eye or your fingerprint, whatever. And then there's a token. So it may be a TOTP app on your phone, which is the code that
Authenticators.
it goes to like every 30 seconds or a minute. You can get a text message. That's one of the weaker, that is the weakest factor, but it's still.
Text message is a weaker factor.
Yeah, and unfortunately, most banks use that. So I'm glad this came up. The Congress just passed a law not long ago, or maybe it was executive action, but every carrier has to give you the ability to lock your SIM now. So they're called different things. Like I think T-Mobile calls it SIM lock, and maybe AT&T it's called SIM security or something like that. But it makes it to where you're not vulnerable to what's called a SIM swap attack, and that's where they call the help desk and they convince the help desk that they're Nick, and now they say, "Yeah, I've gotten a new phone. I need to transfer my
data."
Yeah. So it's the middle of the night. You're asleep. When you wake up the next morning and your phone doesn't work, and it's like, what's going on?
And data has been transferred.
They've had hours to just nuke you. So yeah. So anyway, it's you want to lock that SIM like now as soon as you finish watching this. But it's banks use that, and there's a couple of reasons why. One is location; they can tell where you're at based on IP telephony and the mapping. So it gives them an assurance of security. If they've seen you in Southern California before, then it's probably okay. But if they're in Korea, maybe it's not. And 3 hours ago, you were in Los Angeles. So, they can figure out maybe there's an issue. So that's one way. And then there's tokens like a YubiKey or one of these actual, keys that you touch, or it's biometric, or sometimes both. Those are all different factors. So the 2FA, if you have that capability, use it every single time. That's the single best thing you can do. I mentioned that I'm a lifelong hacker. I'm a target. The last time I got targeted was an environment that did not offer 2FA. So I got on and this was a bank. They didn't offer it at the time. Now they do. But I'm like, I need to get my password changed, blah, blah, blah. They ID'd me. I had to send them my driver's license, like a picture of it and whatever. Well, then the next Saturday morning, I think this was on Thursday, Saturday morning, they called me. They said, we need to change your user ID because they're back in. So anyway, they eventually got 2FA, used 2FA. But from a personal perspective, protecting you, protecting your family, and that's another thing with MFA is tell your friends and family, encourage them to use it. Also, use encrypted messaging. We have a thing that's called zero clear, so nothing sent in the clear. That's one of our methodologies that we use at Planet Security. And with our clients, we will never discuss client information or even have a discussion aside from that original introduction unless it's over encrypted channels. So, the client data is important to us as well. So to your point, protect yourself, protect the people around you. Don't let them know when you're going on vacation. You got to have a conversation with kids because that's, this is new, certainly new to kids. And so maybe say, I'm not sure when we're leaving. The kid doesn't know exactly. So, if you can obfuscate it just a little bit, sometimes that'll work. As you go into an organization like USC and Marshall, then now you've got a lot of people that need to all be doing this. It's one of those things where you've got herd immunity. So as an attacker, I need one entry point.
So you're as strong as a weakest link.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you've got some weak link that's spewing out data that could be used against you, and maybe he's not using MFA, or maybe they're writing down stuff or maybe they just leave the YubiKey. YubiKey is a type of 2FA. They leave it stuck in the computer. Not a good idea, because now if somebody knows your password before you come in the morning, well, there's your YubiKey. So they just, they use it and now they're in. So the organization could be
Vulnerable.
yeah, because of their whatever. And now as we get into a nation state, the United States, the thing that works against our country is we're trained as kids, brought up to be friendly. That's the American mentality. That is a social engineer's dream. Social engineering was hacking people. So you use information against them, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. But that works against us as a country. If you go to Israel or some of these people that are more into a holistic security vision, they're not that friendly. Once you get to know them, they're friendly enough, but they're not going to just talk like I'm from the South. We're very friendly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it can often be.
The hospitality is a second nature. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you smile, you try to offer whatever service you can to help them out, and that can be used against you.
And then Israel does that out of self-defense and survival. And I think, so if I were to translate that, you're basically saying that you have to live in that paradigm, that your life is in danger, and you protect yourself.
Yeah, put yourself in the seat. If it wasn't always that when I drive home, I use what's called an SDR, a surveillance detection route. Well, my kids are familiar with it now. We drive all over creation to get home. And it wastes a lot of time and wastes some fuel, but I know if somebody's following me or not. And that's just where I've been in government and, whatever for so long. But, the kids are used
That's
to it.
fascinating, by the way. I do that because I just don't have a sense of direction.
Just wandering around. Yeah, it's something that you might want to do just as fun. Drive around and just look in the rearview mirror and see if you see the same car more than once, just stuff like the spy game thing. But there's a lot of things that you can do to protect your family, but ultimately as Americans, we don't have a society that is conducive to cyber. It's just not who we are historically.
Ernie, from a lifelong hacker to a CEO of a Planet Security, what a transition. But we need more of you in this world, because as we become so digitally connected, cybersecurity threat, and I often say this, that the future world wars are not going to be based on firing the missiles and those things. It will be based on the cyber threats.
Agreed.
Because you can literally bring down the entire infrastructure if you successfully penetrate into it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And not to necessarily plug, but a lot of our services and products that we sell at Planet Security, we have what's called the day two baked in. So we have, we say built for wartime scenarios, not peacetime paperwork. And so,
Well said.
yeah, what we do is, day one is when the war breaks out. You fire all your bullets, you fire the missiles, you hopefully keep all your aircraft and ships and submarines and whatever. But you have a finite amount of each of these things. So day two is the replenishment. So if you're in the cloud, what do you think the likelihood of the cloud being operational on day two when a full-out war starts? Everybody said cyber is the first thing they're going to use.
Yep.
So you may not have the ability to operate on day two. And it's not just manufacturing, it's the entire supply chain that, we're here for with this conference. So cyber is a big thing. So having that mindset of day two resiliency, how is your company going to work? I deal a lot with defense. How are they going to be able to make the new widget? How are they going to get it to the battlefield so that the American warfighter can do their job, maintain lethality?
Such a fascinating conversation, Ernie. I got to tell you, we got to do this again with some time.
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much,
Yes,
and
sir.
appreciated great insight.
Thanks.
And there you have it. I mean, we talk often about all of these components within the resiliency, agility, and sustainability of supply chain. Cybersecurity plays a huge role. And I hope that today's episode gave you some insight both from the industry standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint, what Ernie shared. Hopefully this becomes a valuable insight for you. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed another exciting episode of Supply Chain Demystified. Stay tuned for the next demystifying discussion on the supply chain. Visit uscsupplychain.com to stay up to date on all things supply chain.